big hello to you. It's amazing to see you. I do hope you're well. Welcome to Weir Yard. I'm Jenny Kirk, and today we're going to be looking at the hot new arrival of the Rapido E1 tank. Now, these have probably sold through quicker than almost anything else I can remember. And even during the time of me filming this video, I've just gone back to check the prices, and some of the livery options at our affiliate linked retailer have actually sold out. It's quite incredible just how quickly these are selling. So we very kindly received a sample of the E1 from Rapido last Thursday. Now, we were away at the Bluebell Railway event over the weekend, so I didn't get a chance to film it then. But even at that event, they were selling so quickly. It was very apparent that these were a standout model of the year, definitely one that the market has been looking forward to for quite some time. And actually, some of the really pretty pre-grouping liveries have proved to be so popular that they have literally sold out to pre-order. We visited Rapido on Friday, and they actually showed us their warehouse, and there were so many empty shelves. And Andrew Hardy actually said they were full earlier this week, very briefly, and then all the orders went out and now they're empty. So these are quite literally sold out at the manufacturer. But how good really are they? Sometimes it's really difficult when a locomotive is so popular that it sells mostly through on pre-order to really know just what it's going to be like. But thanks to Rapido sending over a review sample, we're going to take a good close look and see. Is this going to be hot property or cold water? Come with me and let's take a closer look. But before we get into the video, don't forget to hit that like button. Consider subscribing to the channel if you've not already done so, ringing the notification bell to make sure that you don't miss out. And of course, as always, we've got an affiliate link down below taking you to TMC, the model centre, for all versions that are left in stock. But do hurry, they've actually, some of them have even sold out whilst I've been recording this. So come with me and let's take a closer look. Today's video comes in association with Trainomatic, makers of DCC decoders and accessories that are designed by enthusiasts for enthusiasts. Find the full range available to order now at tramfabriek.co.uk. We're proud to be supported by TMC, the Model Centre, your first choice for new and used. Pre-order all forthcoming models with confidence, or check out the extensive listings of second-hand. Each model is checked by experts in the field to make sure you're getting the very best. With new models uploaded daily, there's always something new to find. You can also specify from their value weathering and renumbering service right through to bespoke graffiti to get exactly the model that you want. Get something special today by browsing at themodelcentre.com. The model that we've received here for review from Rapido is the London Brighton South Coast Railway E1 in the BR livery, and I'm going to show you the end of the box here. We've got catalogue number 936010, and this is one of two versions of this livery, and this seems to be a theme across the range where a lot of the liveries, including thankfully the most popular liveries, have two different running number releases. So this particular one is BR Black Early Emblem number 32138, and this particular version is DCC ready, although all versions are available with factory sound fitted if you so choose. Now, the box is the pretty typical, really quite sturdy Rapido box that we've come to know. And just looking inside, we've got the booklet, the owner's manual. Yes, congratulations on the purchase of your new London Brighton South Coast Railway E1060. This has a little bit of prototype history. Then we've got some information on fitting the accessories. It's really nice to see that it does show you where some of these accessories go. I've talked about this before in the past. You were often left all at sea trying to guess, so it's nice to see that they've provided that information. We've also got some information on getting into the model, servicing, and don't put too much sway in this. You honestly don't really need to do much with modern locomotives at all, and don't drown them in oil, because that can be just as bad as no oil at all. There's also some information on how to fit a decoder, and we're going to be looking into that later on in this video. So if you've come for the DCC fitting, it's somewhere in the final third of this video. We've also got the function list for if you've got the factory fitted sound version. Then we've also got the exploded parts diagram in the unlikely event that you might need to go to Rapido for spare parts. And what's interesting actually is we visited Rapido trains last Friday from the point of view of filming this video, and it was quite interesting to see just the extensive stocks of parts that they had in their service department for pretty much all models going right back. So even if you bought a model a few years ago, if you got an issue, it's always worth dropping Rapido a line, because they do seem to have a lot of parts available in case you get into any difficulty. Now we've got the extra parts here, and I did mention these in that paperwork. We've got front couplings, vacuum hoses and such like. For a lot of people, these are an either or with the slimline tension locks that come with this, so I've just put those safely back in the box. Getting the locomotive out of the clamshell, it really does have a lot of weight, and this is something that is really good to feel. It looks a little bit odd without any lining. This is an unlined version, and my personal preference is always for a little bit of lining on these black BR era locomotives. I do think that the plain black such as this does look, well, a little plain, but it is entirely authentic to how the prototypes would have looked. So getting aside from the really heavy weight, then these locomotives do very much look like a stretched version of the Terrier, and indeed they owe their heritage somewhat to that Terrier model. Following the success of the Terrier, Stroudley provided the London, Brighton and South Coast Railway with a dedicated passenger version. That was the D class, which was an 042 in 1873, followed by the goods version in 1874, which is this E class, later referred to as the E1. There were 78 of these locomotives built over a period of time in a number of different batches, and it carved out a niche as a strong and capable performer, though they were less well received when used on passenger trains. Stroudley's successors, Billington and Marsh, left their respective marks on the E1s, changing boiler designs and making a number of small detail changes. The Southern Railway inherited 62 of these E1s and then almost immediately sold 5 into industry, modified 4 for use on the Isle of Wight, and 10 more were turned into E1/R 062 tanks by the addition of a rear trailing radial truck, and these were to work lines in the West Country. They lasted well into the BR days, with the last Isle of Wight example, number 4 Wroxall, withdrawn in October 1960, whilst the last E1 used on the mainland, number 32694, was condemned in July 1961. And actually all of the ones which lasted into BR use were actually scrapped, but happily one example was saved by virtue of being one of that quintet that we mentioned being sold into industry, and was bought for preservation after a full life working in the coal industry, and was preserved in I think it was 1963. This is currently being overhauled at the Isle of Wight Steam Railway, where it is planned to be returned to service as number 2 Yarmouth in full Southern Railway lined green. There are a number of different versions available from Rapido, from the original London, Brighton and South Coast Railway improved engine green. It's not green, it's brown.
You don't say.
There's also the London, Brighton and South Coast Railway goods green, which really does look quite smart. And green isn't usually a colour that you might associate with the LBSCR, but it really does look good. So good, in fact, I've been working hard to try and track down one that I want to buy for my own collection. It's great to see as well that the Marsh Umber livery has not been neglected, with 2 versions in that. We've also got Southern Black and BR Early Black, as per the example that you see here. We've also got a lined black but with no emblem for number 32151. Then we've also got BR Green in Isle of Wight condition for number 1 Medina and number 3 Ride. And we've also got one of the quintet that was sold into industry as number 30 in Hartley Main Colliery livery, followed by number 4 Roxall in BR Black with the early emblem, and an exclusive from Rapido, which may even be sold out by now, number 110 Marsh lined black, and that's available exclusively from Rapido trains. The model itself looks pretty well built, although I have just picked it up and something has fallen off. So yeah, I can see where that came from. Just seems to be a little bit malnourished on the glue front. It's just the lid to the toolbox on the back. So I will highlight that. That has just literally come apart in my hands. I haven't actually had a moment to look at this. It arrived on last Thursday, and then of course very early Friday morning we travelled down to the Bluebell Railway. And what is really interesting is just how excited people were in general for the arrival of this model. It must be said that the Bluebell Railway is very much in the territory that I think is in the wheelhouse of people who'd be really interested in this model. But it was pretty much sold out within the first hour at the Bluebell Railway model shop, and also some of the retailers who were there as well just basically sold out, particularly the improved engine green and the goods green and that Marsh Umber liveries. Those seem to be incredibly popular, and literally within an hour they were gone, sold out. And that does seem to be replicated from Rapido. So I really do hope that they do another run with some more of those pretty early liveries, because they are getting really hard to find. We do have an affiliate link down below that takes you to TMC the Model Centre. At the time of filming they do still have some of those fancy liveries, but they're not going to hang around for long. Looking at the side of the model, we've got some really quite subtle riveting detail around the side tanks, and this is replicated really well. You can see that the loading gauge has been made full use of by the LBSCR with these tanks that are actually wider than the cab itself, giving the locomotive almost a little bit of a peculiar fat look in the middle, and this again is entirely as per the prototype. Looking back to the cab, this is very reminiscent of the Terrier, but looks to have this rather stretched bunker, and this gave them a somewhat larger coal load to be able to give them greater range. On the back of the model, I have just glued in the lid of the toolbox. This is another feature which is common with locomotives such as the Terrier. We've also got the vacuum pipes here on the back. They might actually be air pipes. It must be said that the London Brighton and South Coast Railway was an early adopter of the Westinghouse air brake, and whilst BR in the early days standardised on vacuum brakes, it must be said that the LBSCR was vindicated later on when they made the switch back to air brakes, so they were very much ahead of their time. There's no hook present in the buffer beam, although this is in the separate detailing pack, but along with the chain, which does mean unless you're willing to trim that down, that is an either or with the slimline tension lock. We've got fully sprung buffers. These are a turned metal construction, and there is quite a nice pleasing spring to these. They do come back after you depress them. On the buffer beam itself, the correct pattern of rivets can be seen. It's actually quite an interesting pattern, and this would have on the prototype matched up with the structure that's behind. Of course, these rivets holding the buffer beam securely onto that. We've also got separately fitted lamp brackets. These feel very solid. They're of metal construction, separately fitted afterwards. We've got 2 up here on the ends of the toolbox, plus 1 in the middle and 1 to one side. Actually, yes, there is a third one there as well. Probably getting shouted at the screen now by Andy from Rapido. He did say sometimes he despairs at me.
We haven't all mitts to complete smeg pot.
but you know, just doing my best here. Looking to the top of the bunker, it's actually quite nice that they've not filled it right up to the top. I know this is something that a few people in the past have commented about, that if it's filled to the top with a plastic representation of coal, there's no room to be able to add in crushed real coal over the top. And I like the fact that this gives the best of both worlds. People like me who don't bother with that, we've got this really quite nice representation of coal, but for those people who want to add that custom extra, there is room to get that in there without looking over full. The actual coal rails at the top do look quite fat, and I don't know, it's very difficult to find a photograph looking down on these locomotives, but that does look to be a little bit on the thick side just around the top. The coal itself is a great representation, and there is elements in there that I can see of the detail of the hopper. The windows on the back of the cab, we've got flush glazing, and the surrounds are finished in a kind of a brass colour, really quite nice, and these really quite slender metal bars. It does feel metal on there. These on the real locomotive would be to stop coal when it's being loaded from breaking that glass, and that is really quite a nice feature. Looking inside the cab there, it's flush glazing as well on the inside. They've done a really good job with this, and the decoration too. It's sometimes a shame that it's very difficult to see inside the cabs, because this is where a lot of the finish is applied. So we've got this kind of creamy fawn brown colour for the inside back wall of the cab. We've still got those portholes picked out with brass, and then the cab roof is just black underneath. There's a huge wealth of detail in here, all correctly picked out with the copper piping, brass fittings, and even those gauges have needles on and such like. The front spectacle plate of the cab has that light, almost fawn brown colour, stroke cream, which really does look quite nice, picks out a lot of the detail. Correctly fitted brass porthole surrounds and flush glazing from both sides, as it should be, but you know, we kind of came used to this almost solid bar of clear glazing in the cab. We don't have any of that. Looking to the front of the cab, really that is really nicely finished, and this cab roof very reminiscent of the Terrier. Quite a complex shape. We've got the arc across, which is finished correctly, but then we've got these additional curves on the front. Again, really quite complex. It's curving in multiple directions, and that does seem to have been captured incredibly well. The seam across the roof, it's not too overly done, but it is there, can be seen, just as it should. Looking across the tops of the tanks, we've got a lot of separately fitted parts on here, including pipework, handrails, and the tank fillers too. There's really a lot going on, and these do seem to be quite robust. I'm prodding around on here, and it does seem to be a mix of metal parts and plastic parts, depending on what goes where. And they are well in there. So I'm going to put the loss of the top of that toolbox down to just one of those things. It's an easy fix, so really not worth dwelling on too much. I do like the finish on some of this pipework with the copper and brass. It would have been quite easy to just kind of finish these all in either a brass or a copper colour, but actually the fittings are picked out correctly in brass and the pipework is correctly picked out in copper, and it really does look better for that. Underneath the boiler, you can see we've got a representation of the motion, and these are all correctly picked out in red. There is what looks to be a seam across the bottom of the boiler. It should be added that here on your screen you're seeing that much bigger than true size. It's not really all that noticeable, especially when this locomotive is running, but I am going to just point that out. It's one of those things, by nature of the construction of these things, there has to be a point somewhere where the model comes apart, and it has at least been hidden down near the bottom of the boiler, so we don't have a seam up here on the top. The dome itself does look to have a little bit of a gap around, although on the real locomotives it must be remembered that the boiler itself, this is not the boiler barrel that you see, but rather the ornate cladding that goes over the top, and underneath this there would usually be some kind of insulation. I've seen wooden slats used on boilers, but also sometimes things like, I guess, asbestos fibre would have been used back in the day. So that gap is entirely prototypical. The safety valve bonnet as well, really nicely finished, quite a complex shape, and correctly we've got the whistle kind of bracketed on the side. This feels like a plastic part, but it is well finished in a combination of the brass and the copper finishes. Looking to the front face of the model, you can see the number plate there on the front. I'm just looking very carefully. It does appear that that front number plate is slightly at an angle. That's not necessarily unprototypical, although I think as a rule these were fitted on the locomotives pretty straight and true, so it's something you could put down to maybe wear and tear not being put on right at works, but I suspect that Rapido's intention was for that to be straight. We've got a shed code down there at the bottom, 71D. That is really quite sharply applied. And then we've got the smoke box dart. This feels like a metal addition. It is separately applied and really is quite robust. Again, on the front, we've got the vacuum standard. I'm going to call it a vacuum standard. That's what I'm used to, but I am very mindful it could be an air pipe given the London, Brighton and South Coast Railways early adoption of the Westinghouse air system. We've got additional lamp brackets here across the front, again separately fitted metal parts, and then we've got that nice arc of a handrail across the top of the smoke box door. The smoke box itself really is nicely finished, and we've got these correct wings at the side which are then abbreviated just over what would be the pistons and the splashers for the wheels. That really is quite nicely picked out in an almost subtle, slightly matte finish of black. Of course, the smoke box and the funnel being subjected to a lot of intense heat with heavy working will be finished with a different type of paint, a kind of stove enamel, which will be different from the finish on the rest of the locomotive. And this is quite pleasingly correctly replicated on the model. On the tank sides, I should draw attention to these. The BR Early crest is crisp and sharp, and exactly as you would expect. Even on close-ups there, you can see that the detail really is quite crisp and clear. The numbering on the tender side, 32138, is really quite well done. And then looking further down, we've got these quite plain coupling rods. Again, that is entirely prototypically accurate, and they're finished in this almost sort of like a gunmetal grey stroke silver, which really does look quite good. Hexagonal nuts that fix these to the wheels, and we've got factory fitted brake gear, including these brake blocks, which do seem to be slightly wider than the wheel treads, but that is entirely prototypically accurate. Of course, 00 wheels are slightly narrower than the prototype would be. It's one of the compromises of the scale and gauge, but the brake blocks do appear to be at the correct width, so that will be something that will please EM and P4 modelers. Guard irons at the correct raked angle. These do seem to largely line up with the wheel treads, and the cab steps, these feel to be metal, and they are really well on there. It's another area where I've seen on models of the past these can be quite prone to coming off, particularly with handling, but no such problems with these. The wheels have the correct pattern spokes, and counterweights really do look good, completely finished in the black finish. We've got chemically blackened wheel treads too, so that they don't stand out, and there's a lot of extra detail on the chassis with the ash pan and firebox details actually replicated on the casting. At the back of the locomotive, we've got what I can only assume is the air tank, perhaps, for the Westinghouse brake, complete with pipework. That's all in there, and the couplings are slimline tension locks, and actually the mounting point is hidden quite nicely within that air tank. That's quite nice to see. Again, at the front, the mounting point is hidden away. We've got the slimline tension locks fitted both ends from the factory. On this side, we've got, actually that is the Westinghouse air pump. This is nicely finished, and I do particularly like that brass plate that's picked out on that. It is a really nice touch and certainly does look good. Cab handrails are finished again in the same sort of gunmetal grey stroke silver as the side rods. Looking across the bottom, we've got some really nice spring detail, and we've also got this cutaway in the chassis just here, and that means that when you look through from the side, we get the correct profile and the air gaps all the way through. Additional support is provided by...
This is Clark Railworks, and this is what we do. You'll know us from Ellis Clark Trains, and you'll get the same friendly expertise with us too. We've got a huge range of pre-owned model railways from all your favourite manufacturers, and maybe some you hadn't heard of before. It's the place to come for quality. We don't stock substandard models, and everything we sell is fully tested and photographed by model railway experts. No matter whether you model double O gauge, N, HO or more, we have sought after models from all around the world with new listings added every weekday. Check out what's available now at clarkrailworks.com and don't miss out on your latest loco.
Straight out of the box, this is actually really silky smooth. I had it on my DC rolling road and there was no sign of notchiness or anything like that, just out of the box. Super smooth, even down to slow creeping speeds, and I was very pleased with that performance. It's also very much apparent that there's a firebox flicker on these locomotives, and this comes on at actually quite a low voltage on DC and remains fairly constant. It doesn't become incredibly bright. It does brighten up if you give it a lot more power, but not by a huge amount as to be a little bit offensive. And it appears that there may be two different colours, so on DCC 2 different auxiliary functions, but I will investigate that once we do the DCC fitting. But all in all, if you're a DC modeler, then this model is a silky smooth mechanism straight out of the box. So we come now to DCC fitting, and I am going to refer to the paperwork that came with this. Just need to be certain we've got 6 screws that we need to undo, and there are a 7th and an 8th just here underneath the bunker, so we just need to make sure that we leave those be. So I'm just going to have that as my little reference. We need a small Phillips head screwdriver. I've got one here, and it pays perhaps just to use a servicing cradle just to make sure you don't damage any of the detail, but I is T hardcore, yeah? So I'm just using my hand. We've got these 2 at the front, and let's just double check. Is that? Now, which way's which? You know, I'm not entirely sure. Which is front and which is back? So that looks like the front. So actually, it's these 2 underneath the cab that we need to leave well alone. So just here at the front, very careful here because these are slightly underneath the brake rigging. So just try not to damage anything. And the other thing to watch out for is we don't want to mess up the head of these screws. They are coming out at a slight angle, so actually that one does feel like it's coming out much better. I seem to have a screw here which, there we go, it's just let go. So just very careful, and then very carefully remove. Now it's not clear on this. I don't know, free body from chassis. So it appears that we are to leave the cab in place. And one moment, caller, I'm just going to investigate this off camera. I'm not sure whether this is right or not, but I actually undid those 2 extra screws. So you can see there it says 6 screws. I've done 8, and the entire cab comes away too. I don't know whether the cab is supposed to just be left with the locomotive, but it just didn't feel like it wanted to move. And I can see there actually the cab is secured loosely but firmly to the boiler, and this is something we saw this with the Y7 as well. that the instructions didn't quite tally with what was best for getting into the locomotive with extra screws, and but we're in now. Just be careful and be gentle with it. Don't try and just pull things too hard. You can see that we've got a factory fitted speaker over here, just in this recess in one of the tanks. We've got the firebox flicker down there, and the motor fits quite neatly within the casting of the smoke box and the boiler. There's a brass flywheel just in there, and then the drive is provided back to this gearbox just hidden in the firebox. Turning it round, you can see we've got a little a circuit board here, slightly secured by some Captain tape, and I'm going to just unpeel that from the bottom, peel it back, and then this little daughter board should just slide out. There is actually just a little bit of foam in here. I'm just going to carefully tease this out. There we go, got that out. And don't strain any of these wires. They're quite neatly folded in. There we go. Just lets go and gives us that little bit of extra space. This feels like it's slightly sticky, or it could just be, there we go. It's released that wire, and now we can move this board all the way out. Yeah, there is a little bit of sticky on there, and this should just lever off. And it's a Next 18 decoder. Now, we recommend the Train-O-Matic Next 18 decoder. It's nice and small. It gives you the auxiliary functions that you need. I'm using one that I've got in stock and got to hand. Just make sure that it does sit neatly all the way into the Next 18 socket. Now, I'm just going to experiment with this and see, do we need that extra little bit of foam? I do think we're going to need something. We've got a lot of circuit board on this particular decoder, and I want to make sure that that doesn't make contact with the metal of the chassis. So I'm actually going to put that little piece of foam back in, and actually, yeah, that is sliding in quite nicely, and that will serve to keep the decoder in the socket nice and firmly, but also protect that circuitry from any potential shorts. Make sure it's all the way down, and then I'm going to use the Captain tape that was in here to start with, just to secure everything in place. Now, what I would recommend at this stage is to get this to the programming track with the body off, and just make sure all is well before we put the body back on. So I've tested it on the programming track, all works, and I will just say, just to alleviate the screaming of Rapido at the screen, there is only one auxiliary function. There looked to be a slight yellowish glow on DC, but actually just on F1 with this particular decoder we've got the firebox flicker effect. So I'm going to put the body back on, and it is quite tight on space, I will say, for anybody who wants to contemplate a HM7000 install on this. Good luck. It will need a little bit of work to get that in, but there we go. Right, so I'm just going to very carefully try and get the body back on. I'm going to just lever this apart. There is a little bit of a wedge on that boiler there. So just trying to, oh, it is a very, very tight fit. I have to say that DCC fitting this locomotive is not as easy as some of the other locomotives, and it does look like these two little pipes are trying desperately to just catch on that there. So how else can I get them down and around? Again, I think this is just simply a case of, I'm going to have to work really hard at this. There's just so much stuff that is at risk of catching. So don't force it down. It really doesn't want to go. Oh, there. And it's immediately fired this on. See, this is the problem. Unfortunately, it doesn't seem to be possible to get that on without causing damage to parts, and oh, we're just so tight in there. It looks to be these wires here. DCC Fitting, we'll say, is not for the faint of heart, and it may well be that paying that little bit extra to have somebody else DCC fit this is going to be a very good investment. So again, there's that little piece there. It goes straight onto that ridge on the boiler, and it really does not want to flick over. I'm going to get that down there. And unfortunately that is quite a mark that is left. I'm going to have to try and glue that back in. And we've got these, need to locate there, got it in the hole. The problem is you need about a dozen hands to manipulate a dozen different things all at exactly the same time, and it's just not practical. The screws are now just slowly, don't over tighten these, never over tighten screws, you'll just strip the thread or strip the heads and cause huge problems, and maybe even void warranty should warranty become necessary. So we've got all those in, and now I'm going to have to go away and oh, that isn't sitting right. What is it? Feels like something is jammed, so I'm going to have to go away and sort this. I don't know what is wrong. So yeah, I'll be back in a moment. So I've finally done that. I've glued back that piece, and actually it did go in reasonably well. Just got to fiddle it in, be very careful, very sparing with the glue. But I've also noticed that these two extra pieces seem to have rained down whilst I was doing that. I have no idea where they go, so it's a very, very challenging DCC fit. When it comes to running on DCC, the model did perform reasonably well. It got through all areas of Weir Yard without derailing, apart from the radius 1 curves, and that is a big ask for a lot of locomotives. On the Torture test track, it did manage a 3-tanker train with a guards van on the back up the 5% grade, and that is quite a tall order for any 6-coupled steam locomotive, so I would say that it has more than enough power and grip. On the main line, it really did just romp away with a very, very long coal train, more than what most people would ever tax this locomotive with, and I would say the performance in that respect really is exemplary. It did have a few issues over Insel Frog points and some of the poorly laid junctions on the main line. It seemed to lose power for a brief instant and then pick up and carry on. And whilst I've had a good look at the chassis, there are no wiper pickups on these. It appears to gain its power from the actual axle bearings, so there's not really anything that can be adjusted. This might improve with some extensive running in, as some of the bearing surfaces kind of just remove any coating that might be on there from manufacture. All in all, though, it was a pretty good performer, and one which hopefully will only get better as it runs. There's also the firebox flicker that really does look quite good in the cab. It's not overpowering, and as I said before, contrary to my original supposition, it's not 2 different functions, it's just one. On the decoder I used, F1 brought that up, and with a fiddle for some of the auxiliary functions and the lighting effects, it'd be really easy to get that to flicker, but the flickering circuit is not included within the circuit board of the locomotive itself. So we turn now to the scores. First up is build quality, and this is a nice solid locomotive. There's a lot of separately applied detail, and some of this did seem to be just a little bit fragile when it came to handling, and a couple of parts did spring clear during the DCC fitting. It also should be said that one of the handrails in the cab seems to have become just a little bit detached, but none of this is anything that can't be fixed with a tiny amount of glue. The same can be said for the lid of the toolbox, which came away when I took it out of the box, but that does seem to be part of the course with some of these really quite intricate locomotives from manufacturers, and none of that was anything that would be any real problem. I'm going to give this an 8.7. On running quality, again, it performed really well, hauling quite a long train on the main line, and that's the kind of performance which really does look good on any layout, where you're not going to run any issues of it losing grip and just spinning its wheels. Even on the 5% gradient, it handled a short train all the way up that gradient, so I'm going to give this a 7.9, with most of the points lost for that intermittency on insole frog points, which I can't seem to be able to adjust out of the box, because this doesn't use wiper pickups but takes its power, it seems, from another means. On DCC fitting and innovation, well, on DCC fitting for me was probably the biggest disappointment out of the box with this locomotive. I did follow the instructions, and with those 6 screws taken out, it still wouldn't release the body, and I felt frightened that something was going to break. I ended up undoing the extra 7th and 8th screws to release the bunker and cab, and this did at least allow me to remove all of the body. Even with the body removed, it didn't seem obvious how the boiler and tanks would actually detach from the front of the cab, and it seems to me that the easiest way to proceed from the outset would just be to remove everything, and that isn't the step that's outlined in the manual. Once inside, the DCC fitting was fairly straightforward, but space is really tight. I like the fact that the speaker is integral, so a sound installation of your choice is definitely something that's fairly easy to do. But if you're looking to go down the HM7000 route, then this is not a locomotive that is going to be an easy fit without major surgery. But that, in fairness, does apply to an awful lot of locomotives, as those decoders are rather oversized. The decoder I chose to use and the decoders we recommend from Trainomatic will fit pretty readily inside this locomotive, and there does seem to be plenty of space for a standard NMRA specification Next 18 decoder. Where there were big problems was trying to get the body back on afterwards, and the pipework and clack valves on the boiler did seem to really struggle to stop you from getting the boiler back on. With a lot of work I was able to get there, but you really do need 4 hands and multiple pairs of tweezers, which, well, that just isn't practical. So in the end, some of these clack valves just broke free and came off, and I had to glue them back on afterwards. The seating of the front splashers and the base of the smoke box did seem to fight all the way, and it really wasn't the easiest of DCC fits, so I'm going to give it a 5.1. On accuracy and quality of finish, this locomotive really is superb. There's so much fine detail, particularly in the back head of the cab, and whilst this is probably one of the more simplistic liveries, certainly the photographs that Rapido have on their website showing the other liveries such as LBSCR Goods Green and the LBSCR Burnt Umber or Improved Engine Green really are quite sublime, and I'm going to give this the full 10 out of 10. When it comes to price, the RRP for DCC Ready is £164.95 and DCC Sound Fitted from the factory is £264.95, and actually that £100 uplift for sound is well worth it, if only for the peace of mind of not having to do that rather complex and painstaking DCC fit. We do have an affiliate link down below taking you to TMC, the Model Centre, where you can find the livery options that are still available, and these come in at a discounted price of around the £144 mark, and get them whilst you can. They are selling really quick. Sold out at Rapido, it's only a short matter of time before they're sold out everywhere. And indeed, when we were at the Bluebell Model Railway over the weekend, all the versions that were available at that show, either from the Bluebell's own model shop or from the retailers who were present, were selling really quickly, with all of the pre-grouping liveries and the British Railways green and the Southern Railway liveries just disappearing within the first couple of hours of the show. These really are proving immensely popular, so don't rest on your laurels. They're not going to get discounted, and they're not going to hang around for long. All in all, it is a really nice locomotive. As the Terrier's big brother, it does look nice on any layout. And I do really look forward to seeing if Rapido will do another batch of these. There's definitely demand for the prettier liveries, and I can see even a second batch selling out quickly. And that gives us a final score of 41.1. So there you are, the hot new E1 from Rapido, and definitely these have sold so well. I do hope to see a second run coming through, but there must be quite a few of you who've already got one of these. Do let me know, what do you think about it in the comments section down below. Share with me your real world experiences, and of course it's a great way to share your findings with your fellow railway modelers. Do check out the comments and see what people have to say. For me, I thought that this really did look something special. I've really been blown away by some of those colourful liveries. And that LBSCR goods green, well, that's not a colour that I would really associate with the London Brighton South Coast Railway. Now, I know it's called improved engine green, hint, it's not green, it's brown. But actually they really did use green, and it looks really quite nice on these locomotives. And it probably explains why it's one of the liveries that really is selling out everywhere. If you're lucky enough to have got one of these, do let me know. Brag and boast about it in the comments. But until next time, this is me, Jenny Kirk, saying please like, share and subscribe. Check us out over on Patreon. You can also find the Monday Club badges at the link down below. The Monday Club wagons are sold out, but those badges still available. We've got a new colour coming in just about 3 weeks or so stay tuned for that. But for the time being, there's a few of the maroon badges still available. We've also got a video coming on our trip to the Bluebell Railway this Friday, so stay tuned for that. It's going to be something really special indeed. Until next time, this is me, Jenny Kirk, saying you take great care of yourself. Happy modelling, bye for now. Today's video comes in association with Trainomatic, makers of DCC decoders and accessories that are designed by enthusiasts for enthusiasts. Find the full range available to order now at tramfabriek.co.uk. Additional support is provided by...
This is Clark Railworks, and this is what we do. You'll know us from Ellis Clark Trains, and you'll get the same friendly expertise with us too. We've got a huge range of pre-owned model railways from all your favourite manufacturers, and maybe some you hadn't heard of before. It's the place to come for quality. We don't stock substandard models, and everything we sell is fully tested and photographed by model railway experts. No matter whether you model OO gauge, N, HO or more, we have sought after models from all around the world with new listings added every weekday. Check out what's available now at clarkrailworks.com and don't miss out on your latest logo.
We're proud to be supported by TMC, the Model Centre, your first choice for new and used. Pre-order all forthcoming models with confidence, or check out the extensive listings of second-hand. Each model is checked by experts in the field to make sure you're getting the very best. With new models uploaded daily, there's always something new to find. You can also specify from their value weathering and renumbering service right through to bespoke graffiti to get exactly the model that you want. Get something special today by browsing at themodelcentre.com. I'd like to thank everybody over on Patreon, and an extra special huge thanks goes out to our Patreon heroes. Without you guys over on Patreon, we really wouldn't be able to keep making the video content that you see on this channel. And don't forget that you can also head on over to patreon.com/Jennifer Kirk and check out the different tiers of rewards. Thank you so much. You are absolute legends.